Welcome to The Authority File, the podcast where you'll hear conversations with academic librarians, technologists, researchers, and authors whose work is laying the foundation for higher education's future. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. If you're new to The Authority File, you can listen to and find previous episodes on all of the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and on our website, choice360.org. My guest is Dr. Bob Brinkman, Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Northern Illinois University. He is also a professor of Earth, Atmosphere, and Environment and an author, advocate, and researcher on issues of sustainability. He's appeared in a variety of media outlets, including CBS News and CNN, and his blog, On the Brink, is one of the most popular sustainability blogs on the internet. His most recent book, Practical Sustainability, A Guide to a More Sustainable Life, published by Springer Nature, is out now. In this four-part series, which is provided with support from Springer Nature, Bob and I take a massive issue, sustainability, and break it down so we can examine it in a context that includes collective and individual responsibilities, research approaches, and how libraries can support sustainable research and goals. In this third episode, we look at the ways an individual really can make a difference. We also examine how environmental justice and racism fit into the broader sustainability goals. We were just talking earlier about sort of the individual, sort of the consumer responsibilities in terms of, buying products that are harmful to the environment and getting out of that. Let's dig into that dynamic a little bit more in terms of how individual responsibilities relate to, corporate lobbying power and the power of large corporations, and the greenwashing, as you described it earlier. What is that power dynamic? How do regular people kind of affect change within that?
That's a hard one, right? How do we move forward into a greener world in a place where it feels like there's so much set against us? It's hard, and it can be incredibly frustrating and disappointing because there are people out there with tremendous amount of money who are trying to advance their own short-term economic interests to the detriment of the greater good. To me, it's all about shedding light and taking personal action. We can't control what other people are going to do. We can only control what we do. And I think it's very important that we don't give up and that we still continue to live the ethical life we want to live based on our environmental ethic. But at the same time, I think it's really important that we shed light on what is the truth that people see out there. How do we tell the story of what is happening with lobbying or with negative aspects, negative decision making? And what's so fascinating is that I feel like a whole generation has just basically sat down, and I don't want to point fingers at what generation this is, but there generations have not really stood up to corruption. They've not stood up to their own personal ethics around the environment or even just how we treat other people. But we're seeing a change with this new generation. They're calling it out. They're saying, look, this is the truth of what is happening in Washington or Paris or Brussels or wherever it might be. These are the differences that I am personally going to make in my life, but I also want to show you what is happening in my country or what is happening in my community around this. And here are the people who are involved in this activity that is harming all of us. And we're seeing this with leaders like Greta Thunberg and many, many others. I mean, she's just one of thousands and thousands of young people out there advancing a greener world.
Excellent. In your book, you described your 30-day sustainability challenge. Can you talk about that program and what it taught you about collective and individual action?
Yeah, I started this a while ago, and I realized that as I was working on my books and working on sustainability initiatives, I realized that what was really helping me stay productive in my own writing and in my own creative space, and I'm an administrator, I'm a teacher, or I'm a writer, I needed to really challenge myself. So I would join these writing programs where I would be challenged by other writers to be productive and reach certain goals within 30 days.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this would be a really fun thing to do in the sustainability space, to really try to challenge people to take 30 days and change your habits, change it up a little bit, because it generally takes about 30 days to modify your behavior on any activity. And I've been running these for a couple of years now, 2-3 years. I run them sometimes on Facebook. I sometimes run them on YouTube, and they're designed so that individuals can make a commitment for a period of time to change a particular behavior. And every day or every couple days, I give a new challenge. For example, I might challenge people to eat vegan for the week and to just give it a shot to eat vegan. It doesn't mean that you're always vegan. It doesn't, labels. Sometimes people don't like that. Maybe people might want to try vegan longer or shorter or whatever it might be. But just to give it a shot for that time and just see what happens, or to find alternative routes to work so that you don't have to drive your car to work for that week or for that day or whatever the challenge might be. And these challenges, they help to build a community of support around people trying to make similar lifestyle adjustments. And I've seen folks go through some pretty cool transformations in this, where and along the way, a lot of people that join are not really folks all that well versed in sustainability, but they start to make different choices in life, and it's been fun to watch.
Excellent. I wanted to talk more about environmental justice and environmental racism, and how those fit into broader sustainability issues. Can you give us some examples of what those are and how we're dealing with them?
Yeah, there's so many of these. I mean, the father of environmental justice is a gentleman by the name of Robert Bullard, and he wrote a book that kind of started this whole movement called Dumping in Dixie. And it was all about the siting of hazardous waste dumps across the American South, and how they were located mainly in BIPOC neighborhoods or low-income neighborhoods in some way. And realize it, and he demonstrated pretty successfully that there's decision making that is out there that can be racist, that can be based on social status and a variety of other factors, that leads to disparities in how people are exposed to hazardous materials and a variety of other things. I mean, there's another book that was out there called The Deadly Politics of Environmental Pollution, that looks at lead poisoning and how lead poisoning of the 50s and 60s remains a problem, but how the companies involved with the production of lead, both in paint and automobile gasoline products, hid that information. And of course, the people that were disadvantaged the most were low income, Black, Hispanic individuals at that time. Today, we have similar issues happening we of course know the Flint water crisis, but there's also many other things. If you go down to the Louisiana and Texas Gulf Coast and look at the oil industry and look at the kinds of environmental devastation in the coastal zones, and that area, again, you see it's largely low income individuals that are impacted. And then if we take it one step further and look at this as an international issue, and if you think about plastic recycling, we know that the locations that take a lot of plastic do not have strong environmental rules. And so a lot of that plastic gets diverted from the waste stream and is used in some places even as a fuel for cooking. And so that water bottle that you might have bought at the gym and drank from to get some fresh water for your cool active lifestyle, then is burned as a fuel in a home in Southeast Asia where the people breathing that smoke are exposed to toxins. And so it's not a very good picture out there on the global scene or even in our own country.
Excellent. So related to that, how are social and economic issues so tightly integrated with the environment and sustainability?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of this is on a regional level. There are a lot of regional choices that places, there are a lot of choices that regions make around the direction they're going in sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for example, if you look at Long Island, I used to live on Long Island, and they went through an economic development program in the last 10, 20 years after the downturn back 15 years ago. They did a lot of planning around where they wanted to go after that economic downturn. And one of the things that they elevated in that conversation was sustainability. And so moving forward, leaders across Long Island elevated the idea around what kinds of businesses they wanted to attract, what they were going to invest in the future, and sustainability was square in the middle of it. So over the last several years, Long Island has invested heavily in small agriculture, on improving fisheries, improving natural areas, in attracting businesses that had limited impacts on the environment. Compare that with other states, and I won't name them, or other localities that are trying to attract very dirty industries for the quick buck of getting a tax base in. It's a very different kind of thing, those kinds of choices. So I think that local leaders have options in what they can move forward for the greater good of their community. And I think community members need to really speak out on the economic direction of their region. They have a tremendous amount of power because we know that there's a lot of local, state, and federal money that goes into investing in our local economies. And we, as taxpayers, should have a voice in how that money is spent.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So you used the phrase "no judgment zone" in your book. Why is it important to look at sustainability as a no judgment zone?
One of the things about sustainability is that everybody expects sustainability experts to be the greenest people they will ever meet. And so if somebody meets me, they immediately think I drive a Prius and I'm a vegan and yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. The reality is everybody's at a different place in their life. And probably the most sustainable time of your life is when you're actually a college student or shortly after you graduate from high school, because you generally have a small home. You probably don't have a car. You're eating probably a pretty low meat diet because of the costs of meat, and your environmental footprint is pretty low. And then fast forward to say you're somebody who's in your 50s or 60s, your kids, say if you had kids, the kids left home, but you still have this giant house and it's just one or two of you lumbering around this big house. That means that the two of you have a giant energy footprint. And maybe you took a job you still live in the suburbs and you work in the city and you've got this big commute. Those are all where you're at with your life at the moment. And so I don't think we should judge people for where they're at, but I also think we need to challenge people to think about where they're at the moment and how we can turn where they're at into a greener moment for them. So it's not about throwing a stone at people because they've got a 40-mile commute. It's just, how do you change their commute or modify their behavior so that they can live a greener lifestyle at that moment?
You just heard from Dr. Bob Brinkman, Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Northern Illinois University. He is also a professor of Earth, Atmosphere, and Environment and an author, advocate, and researcher on issues of sustainability. His most recent book, Practical Sustainability, A Guide to a More Sustainable Life, published by Springer Nature, is out now. This 4-part series is brought to you with support from Springer Nature. Join us next week when Bob and I talk about why it's important to understand the Earth systems through an anthropogenic lens, the linkages between the earth sciences and sustainability, and some of the ways academic libraries and librarians are supporting sustainability research and goals.
And I also think that a lot of the information around sustainability is very fast moving. And so you have to really work with specialists in libraries to understand how to access information, and work with librarians to know, so that the librarians know your interests and understand that you need information on a particular theme as soon as possible, so that they're able to keep an eye out for you to find you the latest research, the latest maps, the latest data set, whatever it might be.
As always, sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced and edited by Choice's digital media producer, Sabrina Kofer. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.